Welcome to Mr. Screen. Certainly everything that will happen on Doomsday will leave everyone speechless, but even so, for those who follow the comics, they know that the outcome of this will lead to something even worse, and I will bring here a being that is even superior to everything we imagined. Without further ado, let's get straight to the point. In a not-so-distant future, the streets of New York were covered in rubble. The buildings that once proudly touched the sky were now carcasses of concrete and steel, scars left by the most brutal battle the Earth had ever witnessed. Dr. Doom Stark, a terrifying fusion between Tony Stark's technological genius and Victor Von Doom's mystical and ruthless coldness, stood as the supreme conqueror. His suit shone with a deadly combination of advanced nanotechnology and ancient runes that pulsed with incomprehensible power. Before him, the new Avengers lay in pieces. Sam Wilson, the new Captain America, struggled to his feet, his wings broken and his shield cracked. Beside him, Kate Bishop, the new Hawkeye, gasped, her bow broken in her trembling hands. Shang-Chi, his face covered in sweat and blood, struggled to stand, the 10 rings in his arms emitting a dim light. "You tried," Doom Stark said, his voice echoing with a tone of triumph and contempt. "But your resistance was in vain. Doomsday is inevitable." A boom split the air. For a moment, even Doom Stark looked away in surprise. A figure emerged from a glow, a flowing cloak and an aura of unmistakable arrogance. Loki, the god of mischief, stepped into the scene, his expression wry and his eyes shining with ulterior motives. "Loki," Thor murmured, who had been unconscious until then, waking up with a gleam of hope in his eyes. "You saved them." Loki raised an eyebrow and gave his brother a mocking look. "Save is a strong word, Thor. Let's just say I'm here to right a wrong. And believe me, that righting will cost us dearly." Doom Stark frowned, assessing the new threat. "You've come to challenge my supremacy, god of trickery? What wrong is it that you fear so much?" Loki gave a short laugh, walking across the battlefield as if it were his own stage. A Doom, always so confident. "No, I didn't come for you. I came for something that all of us heroes and villains have unwittingly unleashed. The battle for power, the manipulation of the Tesseract, and the convergence of realities. We created something that should never exist." Thor approached, still with difficulty, staring at Loki. "Speak, brother. What does it all mean?" Loki paused dramatically, the echoes of destruction still reverberating around him. "We have created the Beyonder, an entity that is the very embodiment of the impossible. And he is coming to consume all that remains of our reality." As Loki spoke, an ethereal energy began to emanate from the sky above. It was as if the very fabric of reality was unraveling. A blinding light emerged. In an instant that seemed an eternity, the sky split open into a void without form or color. From this abyss emerged a towering figure, clad in a robe that seemed to be made from fragments of all realities. His face was inscrutable, constantly shifting as if to reflect the chaos of the timelines he controlled. "Who dares to play with the tides of time?" The Beyonder's voice rang out like a chorus of billions, reverberating in every mind present. He was not just one entity. He was the echo of all the choices and changes made by those who dared to manipulate fate. Doom Stark, for the first time, felt a chill run through him. Even with his fusion of powers, he knew he was up against something beyond all comprehension. "Who are you?" he growled, maintaining his posture, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. "I am the product of your unbridled ambition, your thirst for power," the Beyonder replied, his incandescent eyes falling on Doom Stark and Loki in turn. "All of you, from the god of trickery to the man who thought himself invincible, and the wizard who broke the barriers of reality, you all contributed to my existence." Sam Wilson exchanged a look with Shang-Chi and Kate Bishop, the air thick with unbearable tension. They knew they were facing something that could undo everything they knew. Doctor Strange, in his patched robe, finally appeared floating beside them, his eyes wide with recognition and fear. "He is a primordial entity. He should not exist," he murmured, barely containing the tremor in his voice. The Beyonder raised his hand and, with an almost casual movement, reshaped the space around him. Every stone and speck of dust floated away, dissolving into a silvery mist. "You have spun the timelines like threads in a loom. You have created paradoxes, broken barriers, and defied the natural order." Loki tried to intervene, his voice dripping with sarcasm, masking a hint of fear. "Beyonder, you speak as if this were entirely our fault. But let us be frank, it was fate that pushed us to these choices." The entity looked at Loki, and for a moment, The god of mischief felt as if his entire essence was being unraveled and reconstituted. The blame, god of mischief, lies with all those who dared to defy the flow of time, and punishment will be exacted. Suddenly, bolts of energy flashed in all directions. The new Avengers were thrown back, unable to withstand the Beyonders' overwhelming force. Dr. Doom Stark attempted to launch a counter-offensive with an ancient spell laced with star technology, but was interrupted by the entity's cold, deep laugh. You, Doom Stark, are the culmination of all that has gone wrong. The Judgment Day you seek to enact is nothing compared to my judgment. Now you will all pay. The Beyonder, looming over the battle, seemed untouchable, a force of existence itself. His presence was a vivid reminder that all the heroes and villains gathered together were nothing more than pawns in a much larger game. He watched them with eyes that reflected galaxies in birth and destruction, his face expressionless in the chaos. Dr. Doom Stark, his armor gleaming with sorcery and technology, gritted his teeth. If you want us to pay, come get us. He raised a hand and unleashed a ferocious blast of arcane energy, striking the Beyonder square in the chest. For a moment, the light from the blast blinded everyone. But when the dust settled, the Beyonder was still there untouched. He didn't even blink, and his response was devastating. A wave of his hand and a wave of pure temporal force crashed into Doom Stark. He was thrown like a leaf in the wind, his armor shattering with a metallic scream. Thor, Mjolnir in hand, charged forward with a battle roar. For Asgard and Midgard, he swung the hammer hard, conjuring lightning bolts that lit up the sky like a raging sea. But the Beyonder turned his gaze to the Thunder God, with a single glance, brought the hammer to a halt in midair. The object, a symbol of Thor's power, began to disintegrate into particles of light, leaving the son of Odin in shock. You do not understand, said the Beyonder, his voice echoing in all directions. This is not about power or courage. This is about rebalancing that which has been distorted by your mortal hands and lesser gods. At that moment, Loki, still dazed by the weight of the situation, slowly rose to his feet, his eyes narrowing on an idea that flickered in his mind. Strange. We have only one chance to stop this, he whispered, crawling towards the Sorcerer Supreme. The key is to undo the anomalies before he can remake reality in his image. Doctor Strange nodded, his cape fluttering as if he shared his master's fear. He raised his hands, tracing symbols in the air that glowed a mystical gold. We need a distraction so I can reverse the flow of a crucial timeline, he announced. Sam Wilson, the new Captain America, heard this and stepped forward, his expression determined. The Avengers and I will keep him occupied, he said, turning to the other heroes who were still able to stand. It's now or never. Shang-Chi, his rings pulsing with energy, joined the captain. I'm with you, Sam. The ensuing clash was fierce and desperate. Sam Wilson flew into the fray, shield in hand, while Shang-Chi, Kate Bishop, and the other heroes attacked from all sides. The battle was a chaotic dance of blows, dodges, and screams of pain. Even united, the heroes could not shake the Beyonder, who moved with the serenity of a god, deflecting, blocking, and dismantling the attacks with a gesture. Meanwhile, Strange and Loki, amidst the shadows of the battle, worked on a spell that would take them to the center of the temporal anomalies. Loki, with a mischievous smile but serious eyes, murmured to Strange, I hope you know what you are doing, wizard, or it will be the end of us all. With a final movement, Strange's accumulated energy exploded in a blinding flash. Time froze for a moment, reality trembling like glass about to shatter. The Beyonder turned, sensing the change, and for the first time an expression of mild surprise appeared on his face. You dare defy the cosmic order? He raised his hands, ready to destroy them all. But at that moment, a boom echoed across the battlefield, and a familiar figure appeared on the horizon, slicing through the sky with lightning. Thor, now wielding a restored and gleaming Mjolnir, pulsing with a blue and gold energy unlike any other. For Asgard, Thor shouted, charging forward with a determination that gave even the Beyonder pause. And with that moment of distraction, the final piece of Loki and Strange's plan was set in motion. The battlefield fell silent for a moment. Doctor Strange's statement hung in the air like an impossible sentence. Thor, Mjolnir pulsing with energy never before seen, stepped back, surprised and skeptical. Loki arched an eyebrow, a disconcerting smile forming on his lips. Sam Wilson, covered in dust and blood, stared at Strange, trying to decipher if he really meant what he said. The Beyonder, watching everything with a disdainful expression, laughed, a laugh that reverberated throughout the fragmented reality around him. Do you believe that any being, even a mad titan, could challenge my supremacy? Doctor Strange took a deep breath, his eyes closing for a moment as his mind ran through the currents of possibilities. He had seen countless futures, scenarios in which all the Avengers were defeated, reality undone and rebuilt at the Beyonder's will. But in a single timeline, one that seemed as fragile as a spider's web, there was a chance. And it involved the return of Thanos. Thanos is no ally, he finally replied, his voice thick with tension. But his strategic mind and his desire for balance may be the only key to balancing the scales. If he understands that existence is at stake, perhaps we can use him. Thor frowned, his expression filled with doubt and contempt. To trust Thanos? The murderer of our friends, of so many innocents? Strange, that is madness. Loki laughed, leaning forward. Brother, the true madness is not to try. The Titan, cruel as he is, understands the need for balance. And now we face something far worse than he ever was. The remaining Avengers looked at each other, their expressions torn between horror and determination. Shang-Chi clenched his fists, the rings on his arms glowing with an uneasy intensity. How do we do this? He asked, addressing Strange. Doctor Strange twirled his hands, tracing runes in the air as the mystical echoes of his magic began to resonate. I will need your help to create a safe haven to pull him from death and trap him on this plane. It will not be complete, but it will be enough to help us contain the Beyonder long enough. As the energy began to build, the Beyonder watched with growing interest. Do you truly believe that a resurrected corpse can change anything? This will be the last of your fallacies. With a snap of his fingers, he unleashed a wave of power that tore through reality, breaking Strange's spell and throwing all the heroes back like leaves in a gale. Sam Wilson flew, spinning his shield in the air and trying to keep his balance as the destructive wind whipped against him. Thor gripped Mjolnir with all his strength, his boots digging into the destroyed ground. Doctor, do it now. Sam shouted, his voice struggling to be heard above the roar of energy. Doctor Strange, with a final effort, conjured a luminous golden portal that pulsed with chaotic energy. On the other side, a figure began to take shape, its skin purple and its eyes burning with a fire that only Thanos possessed. The resurrected Titan emerged from the portal, his face contorted in a mixture of surprise and anger. His eyes narrowed as he saw the heroes and, beyond, the Beyonder. You dare bring me back? Thanos roared, but then he became aware of the Beyonder's overwhelming presence, and a flicker of recognition and apprehension passed through his eyes. He quickly understood that the stakes were far greater than his own ambitions. Thanos, Strange said urgently, we have no time. This entity threatens the entire cosmos. You know what that means. The Titan clenched his fists, a sinister smile curving his lips. So the scales are finally in real danger, he murmured, his gaze returning to the Beyonder. Very well. Let us balance them. Thor and Sam exchanged glances. The plan was insane, but it was their only chance. With Thanos at their side, they were ready to face the Beyonder in one last, desperate attempt to save reality. Thanos stepped forward, feeling the weight of his resurrection and the gravity of the situation. The battlefield, still reverberating with the Beyonder's overwhelming presence, became a stage for what promised to be the greatest confrontation in the history of the universe. The Avengers, exhausted and wounded, watched with a mixture of hope and fear as the Mad Titan advanced toward his enemy. You are a mistake in the natural order, Thanos told the Beyonder, his deep voice rumbling like thunder. Your existence is an affront to the balance. The Beyonder, impassive, simply watched, his eyes shining with a curiosity that bordered on boredom. Thanos, you think you understand the cosmic scales, but you're nothing more than a pawn trying to play a game of gods. Without warning, the Beyonder extended his hand and a bolt of pure energy shot toward Thanos. The Titan erected a barrier of purple energy, the impact echoing with an explosion that sent sparks flying across the field. The barrier trembled but held, and Thanos, with a quick movement, advanced, his eyes fixed on his new target. Doctor Strange took advantage of the distraction to cast a series of incantations in sequence. Complex runes appeared around the Beyonder, trying to contain him in a mystical circle. We need more time, he shouted to the other heroes. Thor, with Mjolnir in hand, launched himself at Thanos' side. We fight as warriors, Thanos, not for you, but for what is at stake. The Titan glanced briefly at Thor, a flicker of respect crossing his face before he focused back on the battle. With a gesture, Thanos created a shockwave that forced the Beyonder to retreat, if only for a moment. Loki, watching the battle from a safer vantage point, arched an eyebrow in fascination. Interesting how our worst enemies can become allies when survival is at stake, he whispered to himself, a characteristic wry smile never leaving his face. The Beyonder, recovering from the onslaught, towered above the battlefield, an imposing figure surrounded by a cosmic glow. No more games, he declared, and with a wave, he opened fissures in reality itself. The air shimmered, and portals began to appear, spitting out alternate versions of the heroes and villains who had fallen or been forgotten. Two versions of Tony Stark emerged, both with empty eyes and consumed by a technological virus. Other portals revealed a savage and unstable Hulk, a dark-eyed Natasha Romanoff, and a Captain Marvel ravaged by uncontrolled power. Sam Wilson exchanged a glance with Shang-Chi and the other Avengers who were still standing. We need a strategy. If we don't stop this now, these realities will consume us. Doctor Strange, still holding the containment spell with all his might, spoke through clenched teeth. Thor, Sam, keep him busy. Loki, you know what to do. Loki rolled his eyes with a sigh. The dirty work always falls to me. But without hesitation, he teleported to the Beyonder's rear, where he began to manipulate the structure of Strange's spell to create a more robust trap. The battle escalated to unimaginable levels. Thanos, fighting with the calculated precision of a strategist, traded blows with the Beyonder, who was shaping reality around him, each punch and blast of energy distorting into echoes of cosmic power. Thor, lightning dancing on his hammer, struck with godlike fury, his strikes only slowing the entity. The Beyonder, feeling cornered for the first time, finally revealed a glint of frustration in his eyes. You think you can challenge me with your petty strategies, he roared. In one sudden movement, he exploded in a wave of power, knocking Thanos, Thor, and the Avengers to the ground. It was then that Doctor Strange saw his chance, a flash of time where the Beyonder's forces were temporarily in disarray. Now he shouted, channeling the remaining energy to complete the spell. Loki activated the final rune, and the light around the Beyonder began to flicker, threatening to trap him. Thanos, realizing what was happening, threw his remaining strength into a final blow, pushing the Beyonder into the circle. The battlefield lit up with a burst of cosmic light that momentarily blinded everyone. When the light returned, the Beyonder was trapped, but his subtle smile indicated that it was not yet over. You have gained a moment, he said, but the end is far from written. Silence fell, broken only by the sound of Thor, panting, and Thanos, who looked around before turning to Doctor Strange. This was just a delay, he stated. The real battle is yet to come. The liberation of Agatha Harkness. After Wanda Maximoff's defeat at the hands of Doctor Strange and the subsequent death of the Scarlet Witch, the world thought that chaos had been controlled. However, in the deep silence of the mystical prison created by Wanda in Westview, another force was awakening. Agatha Harkness, previously imprisoned and without her memories, began to slowly free herself from the spell that kept her subjugated. The process of liberation was long and painful. Wanda's magic was powerful, and control over Agatha seemed impossible to break. But with the death of the Scarlet Witch, the chaotic energies that permeated the spell began to dissipate, weakening the bonds that held Agatha captive. One night, under the light of an ominous red moon, Agatha finally broke her magical chains and freed herself. What happened? Agatha whispered, confused and disoriented. Memories of her last moments with Wanda came flooding back to her in disturbing flashes. She remembered how she had underestimated the Scarlet Witch. Our plan to steal Wanda's power had failed miserably. Yet now she was free, and with an unsettling feeling that something far worse was about to happen. Wasting no time, Agatha retreated to her ancient sanctuary, filled with mystical tomes and ancient artifacts. There was an urgency in the air, as if the very fabric of reality itself was on the verge of collapse. Agatha sensed that there was something she needed to understand, something that had yet to be fully revealed. That was when her eyes fell upon the darkest book of all, the Darkhold. The Darkhold and the prophecy. As she leafed through the Darkhold's macabre pages, Agatha felt the familiar dark energy emanating from the book. The words in an ancient language pulsed with a dark force, and she knew she was getting closer to the truth. Then, in a central page, she read something that made her stop in her tracks. The prophecy spoke of the return of a great destroyer, one who would be resurrected from the ashes to bring doomsday upon all creation. This being was none other than Tony Stark, Iron Man, who, in alternate future, would be brought back to life, but in a twisted form. He would not return as the hero everyone knew, but as a twisted fusion of his technological genius and the arcane power of Victor Von Doom, becoming the new Doctor Doom. The Scarlet Witch started it, Agatha said, reciting the words of the prophecy aloud. Her power has begun the resurrection of Stark, but he will not be the Stark we know. He will be a corrupted version, one who will bring about the end of all things. Dread settled over Agatha. She knew that Tony Stark was one of the greatest minds of his time, but combined with the power of doom and chaos magic, he would be unstoppable, a threat without precedent. The prophecy also spoke of a great war, a battle that would destroy not only this world, but all alternate realities. Agatha knew she could not fight this threat alone. If she tried, she would be crushed like a fly. So she decided her only hope was to seek help. And to face something of this magnitude, she would need the greatest genius the world had ever known, Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic. In search of the Fantastic Four. Knowing there was no time to waste, Agatha made quick preparations. She used her magic to open a portal directly to the Baxter Building, the headquarters of the Fantastic Four. As soon as she stepped through the portal, she was greeted by the security force field that surrounded the building. Clearly, Agatha's sudden arrival was not something she had expected, and it set off alarm bells. Within seconds, Reed Richards, accompanied by Sue Storm, Johnny Storm, and Ben Grimm, appeared to confront the intruder. They were ready for any threat, but they hesitated when they saw Agatha. She looked desperate, not aggressive. "What are you doing here?" Reed asked, his voice cautious. "You're Agatha Harkness, aren't you? Shouldn't you be neutralized?" Agatha held up her hands in surrender, not intending to fight. "I'm not here to cause trouble. In fact, I'm here because if we don't do something now, the world, all realities, will be doomed. I need your help, Reed. You're the only one who can stop the end." Sue stepped forward, studying Agatha's expression. "What are you talking about?" "The end of what?" Agatha quickly explained the prophecy in the Darkhold, Tony Stark's return as Doctor Doom, and the impending apocalypse that would follow. As she spoke, the faces of the Fantastic Four members grew increasingly grim. "Tony Stark as Doctor Doom?" Reed murmured, absorbing the information. "That's unimaginable. But coming from the Darkhold, it's not impossible. He'll be a fusion of Stark's genius and Doom's evil power," Agatha continued. "And once he returns, there'll be nothing we can do to stop him unless we prepare now. So what do you suggest?" Johnny Storm asked, visibly uneasy. "How do we stop a Stark Doom before he even shows up?" "We need to stop his own resurrection," Agatha said. "The spell was initiated by Wanda before she died, but there is still time to undo it. I cannot do it alone. I need all of you, especially you, Reed. Only someone with your intelligence can find a way to reverse the process." Reed was silent for a moment, weighing the weight of the situation. He knew that facing something like this would require more than just power and intelligence. They would be dealing with forces beyond human comprehension. "If what you are saying is true," Reed said finally, "we have no other choice. We will do this." The race against time with the Fantastic Four at her side, Agatha began to prepare the ritual to locate the core of the spell that would bring Tony Stark back. They needed to act quickly, for the resurrection was in progress, and every second brought them closer to Doomsday. The plan was complex. Reed Richards, with his brilliant mind, had developed a way to use the advanced technology of the Baxter Building to track the mystical energies that connected the spell to reality. By combining Reed's scientific knowledge with Agatha's magical powers, they created a device capable of stopping the resurrection, but only if they could reach the exact location where the spell was being performed. "The energy is coming from somewhere in Eastern Europe," Reed said, pointing to the holographic map. "Probably near Sokovia, where Wanda's magic was strongest." "That makes sense," Agatha said. "Sokovia was where Wanda began to lose control over the chaos. It's where her connection to the Darkhold was strongest." "Then let's go there," declared Ben Grimm, ready for action. The Fantastic Four, accompanied by Agatha, set off for Sokovia in their high-speed jet. The tension grew with every mile they got closer, for they knew that time was short. If they failed, Tony Stark's resurrection as Doctor Doom would become irreversible, and the world as they knew it would be doomed. The battle for Sokovia. When they arrived at the scene, they realized that the spell was already in its final stages. In the heart of a magic-ravaged mountain, a circle of runes glowed, chaotic energy flowing around it. It was a sight both terrifying and mesmerizing. "We have to stop this now," Sue shouted, erecting a force field to shield the team from the unstable energy waves. Agatha began to cast the counterspell, her hands glowing with purple and black energy. Reed activated the device they had created, which began to channel mystical energy to contain the process. But as they approached the circle, something unexpected happened. A figure emerged from the shadows, a being who looked like a cross between Tony Stark and Victor Von Doom, but with a darker, more menacing presence. His eyes glowed with an evil green light, and his armor was a fusion of Stark's technology and Doom's mystique. "You are fools," he said, his voice resonating with power. "Nothing can stop me now. I am the future. I am Dr. Doom." The final fight. The ensuing battle was epic. Agatha used all her magic to try to contain the creature that Stark had become, while the Fantastic Four fought with all their might. Reed used his elasticity to avoid the devastating attacks, while Sue used her force fields to protect her allies. Johnny Storm, on fire, threw himself at Doom, and Ben Grimm attacked with his brute strength. But nothing seemed to be enough. The fusion of Tony Stark and Doom was too powerful. His intelligence, combined with arcane power, made him practically invincible. Reed, however, had noticed something. As they fought, he noticed that Doom's connection to the spell was still vulnerable. If they could break the source of the energy, they could perhaps reverse the process. "Agatha," Reed shouted, "focus on the circle. Break the connection." Agatha, exhausted, nodded and turned her attention to the circle of runes. With one last effort, she cast a disruption spell, and the runes began to crumble. Doom roared in rage as he realized what was happening. "No," he screamed, trying to stop Agatha. But it was too late. With one last blast of magic, Agatha broke the spell. The energy that powered Doom began to fade, and he fell to his knees, weakened. Reed and the others seized the opportunity to deliver a final strike, destroying the armor and dissipating Doom's power. What was left of Tony Stark crumpled to the ground, a shadow of the man he once was. Doomsday had been averted. Aftermath. After the battle, the Fantastic Four and Agatha were reunited. They had saved the world, but at an immense cost. The Darkhold prophecy had been stopped, but the threat of dark powers still loomed over the multiverse. "This isn't over," Agatha said, looking toward the horizon. "There are forces out there beyond our comprehension. If we're not careful, something like this could happen again." Reed nodded. "We have to be prepared. The multiverse is vast, and the threats are ever-growing." As Agatha prepared to leave, she looked at Reed and the rest of the group with a rare smile of gratitude. "Thank you. Without you, the world would be lost." And with that, she disappeared in a swirl of magic, leaving the Fantastic Four to reflect on what they had faced and what was yet to come. The world had been saved, but the future was far from safe. Agatha's revelation. After the battle in Sokovia and the temporary defeat of the fusion between Tony Stark and Doom, Agatha Harkness left, but not without leaving one last warning. There was something in the air, an unsettling feeling that what they faced was only the beginning. Reed Richards felt the same. He knew something was still wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on it. Days passed, and the Fantastic Four team was back at the Baxter Building, trying to assess the damage and reflect on what they had learned from the confrontation. However, while Reed was immersed in his research, an unexpected visitor occurred. Agatha Harkness, once again, stepped through a portal in the middle of Reed's laboratory. "Reed," Agatha said in a somber tone, "there is something you need to know." Reed looked up, surprised by her sudden return. "I thought we had solved the problem," he began to say, but stopped when he saw Agatha's worried expression. "You don't understand, Reed. What we faced is just a manifestation, a consequence of something much larger. Reality has been altered by Wanda Maximoff in ways that even I didn't fully understand, until now." Agatha stepped closer, placing a hand on the Darkhold she brought with her. When Wanda altered reality, she didn't just play with the fabric of our timeline. Her actions created ramifications in other realities, other dimensions. And in one of those realities, the real Victor Von Doom, the original Dr. Doom, has already taken possession of Tony Stark's body. What we've seen here is just a shadow of what's to come. Reed fell silent, processing the revelation. "You're saying that in another timeline, Doom has already won." "Yes," Agatha said. "And he's not just an enemy in this timeline. Now that he's merged his power with Stark's technological genius, he's preparing to cross realities. He's coming here, and when he does, he'll be unstoppable." Judgment Day is about to begin. The return of Doom. Weeks had passed since Agatha's warning, and the Fantastic Four remained on high alert. Reed was obsessed with the idea that Doom could appear at any moment. He monitored energy and temporal fluctuations in various parts of the world, waiting for the moment when Doom would attempt to cross from his timeline to theirs. And then the worst happened. One night, a series of explosions rocked the Baxter building. Alarms sounded throughout the base, and defense systems began to fail one by one. Sue Storm erected a force field around the team, while Ben Grimm prepared for combat. Reed accessed the monitors, trying to understand what was happening. Then he saw it, a temporal rift opening in the New York sky, and a familiar figure emerging from it. Victor Von Doom, the real Dr. Doom, now wearing a suit of armor that combined his mystique with Tony Stark's advanced technology, hovered in midair, staring down at the chaos he had wrought. "I told you he would come," muttered Agatha, who had rejoined the group. "But now he is more powerful than anything we have ever faced." Doom landed in downtown New York, his shadowy presence casting a literal shadow over the city. "Did you think you could stop me?" His voice reverberated through the skyscrapers. "I am the future. I am destiny. And now, all realities will fall at my feet." The Fantastic Four's attacks began immediately. Ben Grimm charged forward, attempting to bring Doom down with his brutal strength. Johnny Storm transformed into a ball of fire, hurling himself at the villain, while Sue attempted to counter the attacks with her force fields. But Doom was not the same enemy they had faced before. His armor absorbed blows, his magic protected him against energy attacks, and his technology made him faster and deadlier than anyone could have anticipated. Reed, seeing that they were at a disadvantage, shouted to the group, "We need reinforcements. The new Avengers assemble." Knowing that they could not win this battle alone, Reed Richards activated the emergency protocol, sending a distress signal to the Avengers. Although the original Avengers were scattered or inactive, a new generation of heroes had emerged to protect the world. Within hours, the new Avengers arrived on the battlefield. Sam Wilson, the new Captain America, led the team with the help of Peter Parker, Spider-Man, Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, and Wolverine. Alongside them, other heroes such as Shang-Chi, Kate Bishop, and Yelena Belova were ready to face the threat. "Richards," Sam Wilson shouted, landing next to the Fantastic Four. "Looks like you could use a hand." "We need more than a hand," Reed said. "Doom is more powerful than ever. He's controlling Tony Stark's body from another timeline. If we don't stop him now, he'll destroy all realities." With the new Avengers at their side, the fight against Doom began again. But even with the combined might of so many heroes, Doom seemed invincible. He deflected Captain Marvel's blows with ease, nullified Peter Parker's webs with a single gesture, and his mystical shields prevented any direct attack. "You're pathetic," Doom sneered. "I've transcended what you could ever imagine. You're no longer heroes. You're insects I'll crush under my feet." Reed Richards' plan. As the battle raged on, Reed Richards realized that they couldn't defeat Doom in a direct confrontation. They would need a strategy, something that would exploit the weaknesses of the fusion between Tony Stark and Victor Von Doom. That was when he had an idea. "Agatha," Reed shouted as he dodged an energy blast. If Doom is using Stark's body, he must still be connected to the technological core that keeps the armor running, right? Agatha nodded, understanding what Reed was suggesting. "Yes, if we can break that connection, he will lose control of his body. But we will need something that can hack into and disable that cybernetic network." Reed looked at Peter Parker's Spider-Man. "Peter, I need you to create a device that can hack into Stark's armor. We have to overload his systems from the inside." Peter quickly worked with Reed to create a makeshift device while the rest of the heroes kept Doom occupied. Once the device was ready, Spider-Man launched himself toward Doom, using his agility to avoid the villain's devastating attacks. With a risky maneuver, Peter managed to attach the device to Doom's armor. "Now, Reed," he shouted. Reed activated the device remotely, and Doom's armor began to fail. The internal systems began to overload, and Doom fell to his knees, his connection to Stark's body weakening. "No, this can't be happening." Doom screamed, trying to regain control. But it was too late. The final judgment. As Doom struggled to maintain control, a final wave of devastating energy emanated from his armor, striking the ground and cracking reality around them. The temporal rift that Doom had used to reach this reality began to expand, threatening to swallow everything. "If we do not close this rift, The entire multiverse will be destroyed, Agatha said, her voice thick with urgency. Reed Richards, with the help of Agatha, Sam Wilson, and Peter Parker, worked quickly to find a way to stabilize the temporal rift. Using technology from the Baxter Building combined with Agatha's magic, they managed to create a temporary seal to prevent the collapse. Doom, now helpless and weakened, was finally subdued by Ben Grimm and Wolverine. "You may have won today," Doom murmured in a cold voice, "but the final judgment is far from over." With Doom defeated and the temporary rift closed, the heroes gathered, exhausted but victorious. "Doom's threat has been contained," Reed said. "But he was right about one thing. It's not over yet." Agatha nodded grimly. "What we face today was just the beginning. The multiverse is in chaos, and there are forces beyond our comprehension moving in the shadows. So what do we do now?" Sam Wilson asked, adjusting his shield. Reed looked to the horizon, determined. "We prepare, because the real war is yet to come." And with that, the heroes dispersed, knowing that the peace they had achieved was only temporary, and that the future would bring new challenges, greater than any of them could have imagined. Then, for now. And that was our story for today. What did you think of all this? Click the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos. Until next time, bye.